Hi folks, Prepared Suburbanite here. Had a very interesting conversation with my wife at dinner last night. And what I came to realize is that there's a huge paradigm shift in the prepper community. And I think we have to be on guard. And I want to get into some detail with you and share some thoughts that I think are going to be very important for the future. So stick with us. So when I talk about a paradigm shift, let me just give you a little bit of background. From my perspective, and one of the big reasons that I got into the whole prepping mindset was my fear that our federal government was leaning so far left, so far socialist, so far almost communist in its approach to governance that I was scared. When Barack Obama was first elected, I thought, well, yeah, he's so radical that he's never going to last. And then the American public decided to back up the Titanic and ram the iceberg again and get him reelected in 2012. And that about terrified me. Once we got to that point, I really started getting into being prepared. We started stockpiling food, we started stockpiling water, we spent a lot of time getting our garden ready so that we could be a lot more self-sufficient. I was preparing for retirement at the same time and was able to retire in 2013, thank goodness. And as a result, let me back that up a little bit. Not as a result, but the motivation was that I saw myself, and I believe my wife saw herself, as being part of the conservative, right-wing patriots that were going to have to prepare, band together so that we can fight off a tyrannical government, one that was leaning very much to the left, one that was leaning very much to being a much more socialized state. And after reading, a lot of the prepper fiction that's out there, Joe Nobody and you name it, the dystopian kind of prepper fiction that we see pretty much every day on the bookshelves if you're a prepper, and you realize that that common theme is there, that oath keepers, patriots, conservatives would band together to reestablish a government that respected the individual rights of the people, that understood free market dynamics, that shied away from the transfer of wealth. And those books really got into a lot of detail, a lot of great stories in there, a lot of good prepping lessons in there, but it was all designed to take over or re-establish a right-wing, very conservative governmental approach, knowing that the current government was very left-leaning, very socialistic in its determination, and that was the impetus. So when I got into prepping in a real earnest way, and we really threw ourselves into it, and it became a lifestyle for us, I always thought that I'd be banded together when the S does hit the fan, that I'd be banded together with other like-minded individuals, patriots, oath keepers, conservatives, even Republicans, for the lack of a better term, that we would band together to fight off the tyrannical government. It all changed on November 8th. Donald J. Trump was elected president. His platform and everything that he talked about during the lead into the election was all about the things that the prepper community was embracing as being wrong with America. Well, our borders aren't secure. Well, how about that? We're losing jobs to the overseas markets. We don't have good trade. Unemployment's out of control. The economy's sputtering and failing. And Donald Trump comes along and says, I'm going to fix all that for you, because I know how to do it. I'm a successful businessman. I speak what's on my mind, and I'm going to get the job done. You get me elected, I'll get the job done for you. Well, it's been a week now that he's been in office, and he has begun to follow through on all his promises. Well, at least a majority of them. We've got all kinds of executive orders being issued that are designed to protect our borders, to protect our citizens, to deal with trade issues. He's already pulled us out of or announced the intention to pull us out of the TPP. He's been working with industry to keep jobs here in the United States. He's been working with foreign industry to have them invest in the United States. He will be repatriating dollars that are kept offshore and bringing that money back in here. Just take a look at the stock market and what it's done in the last 2 months. It's totally amazing what's going on. And he's been able to accomplish so much in the last 2 or 3 months, more so than I think any previous president has ever been able to accomplish in such a short period of time. So what that leads me to believe, and after watching a lot of the hype and hyperbole of the Women's March last week and the election or the Inauguration Day protests that occurred in Washington, D.C. that were violent. They got out of control. Those did. The Women's March, not so much violence, but an awful lot of very weird rhetoric. I mean, you got Madonna saying that she was thinking about blowing up the White House. You had Ashley Judd and her nasty woman speech, or poem or whatever it was that she got into, and it was absolutely disgusting. They called it a women's march, and it really wasn't a women's march. It was an anti-Trump march. But what it was led by were people that you just couldn't imagine were going to be in charge of the Women's March. Linda Sarsour is one of the organizers of the Women's March. She is labeled as a Sharia feminist and the organizer of the Women's March. One of the featured speakers was a woman named Donna Hilton, who spent 27 years in prison. 27 years in prison because she kidnapped, raped, sodomized, tortured, and eventually killed a 62-year-old gay man. She served her term, just got out of jail recently, and was considered to be a featured speaker at the Women's March, a representative of the women in this country. Well, the women that I know, that I hang out with, my wife, my daughters, my friends, didn't necessarily feel fully represented by the Women's March. That was an anti-Trump march. And the rhetoric that spun from that was really disgusting and disappointing. So here's what I think's going to happen. And it's got a real possibility. that the lefty loonies are going to continue their protests. The little bit of research that I've done over the last few days, they're organizing already for another march on April 15th or thereabouts to protest the fact that Donald Trump didn't release his income taxes. Well, yeah, he didn't. And he's the, I guess, first president that really didn't do that. And maybe he should have, and maybe he shouldn't have. But I don't really care. I don't think his taxes and what he pays for taxes has really anything to do with his ability to get the job done. But they're going to protest. They're going to continue to protest. There's a call for action all over the country against the Trump administration. You look inside even the federal government and you see these rogue sites popping up from the Department of Interior, the National Parks folks, the EPA. They're all going to protest. They're all going to put their foot down and say, no, we're not going to listen to the rhetoric and the orders from the President of the United States. The media, obviously, is the opposition party right now for the Trump administration. He can't seem to do anything, sign any executive order, without it being so scrutinized and so and painting it to be such an evil, evil thing. Yeah, he did yesterday sign an executive order to shut down the immigration protocols in the United States so that we can try to figure out what we need to do to properly vet incoming refugees and immigrants into this country. Well, they've already labeled it as being placing a big red X on the Statue of Liberty. Chuck Schumer has already disparaged Trump and called him un-American. But you know what? The bottom line is he did it because he said he was going to do it. He was voted in, took the most electoral votes, and he is inaugurated and is now officially the President of the United States. And he's following through on a promise that he made to the American people. And I, for one, applaud him. If we can put immigration on hold for 60 to 120 days until we can actually figure out what we've got to do to make it better, to make it safer, to protect our borders, to protect our people, I'm all for it. It doesn't mean it's forever. It doesn't mean that those folks that are being tortured and persecuted in those countries will not have an avenue to get in here. But they will be vetted, I'm sure, and they're going to have to be. He's also going to start building the wall. In fact, I believe that he's going to start taking bids on the construction. He signed the order, and it's underway right now. And there was a great amount of approval and relief signed by the Border Patrol and the ICE agents saying, by God, it's about time we can do our jobs. But that wall's going to get built. And I don't know if Mexico's going to willingly pay for it, but they'll pay for it in one form or fashion or another. Just the bottom line. Trump will, I'm sure, make America great again with respect to our safety and with respect to our security and with respect to our economy. So my concerns are really that the progressive left, the socialists, the communists, the Bolsheviks will continue their protests, and they will continue to push, and they will continue to incite, and they will continue their rhetoric, and they will continue their hate, and they will continue their violence. Some of the violence that they've been involved in is just almost unheard of, what's been going on. I read a story that came out of Minnesota yesterday where a couple has been basically forced out of their homes because their neighbors apparently hung a Nazi flag on their house. And when folks noticed the Nazi flag and figured out whose house it was, they really started taking the heat. Well, what the bottom line was that the neighbors apparently set up these folks, planted a Nazi flag on a flagpole on their front porch, and thought it was a pretty cool thing to do, protected speech and all that. No, that's hate speech. And while it may be protected, and I do believe that officially hate speech is a protected form of the First Amendment rights, they went way too far. Basically, they shouted fire in a crowded theater. And you can't do that. Those people were damaged. Those people are going to be forced to move out of their house. Just totally insane. And you surf around on Facebook and different media that's out there, and you can see evidences of the left-wing violence, and it seems to be escalating more and more and more. And why it escalates is that they're so unhappy, that they're so angry, that they can't figure out how to express themselves by doing anything but committing violence. And I believe that that violence and the rhetoric is going to continue to the point where they're going to challenge the federal government, and then the federal government's going to push back, and then the violence is going to escalate a little bit more, and we're going to end up with a divided country, possibly a civil war. But the paradigm shifts. Where originally I thought, when I first got into the prepping community, I originally thought that I'd be banded with oath keepers and patriots to take over a tyrannical government. And what I see happening now is that those same oath keepers, those same patriots, those same conservatives are going to be standing shoulder to shoulder with our federal government, trying to fight off the insurgency of the left-wing loonies. Don't give up your preps. You're going to need them. This is the Prepared Suburbanite reminding you to be prepared always. And I'm out for now.